Have you ever read a sentence that just felt powerful? One that's clear, confident, and just plain smart? Well, that's not magic, and it's definitely not a talent you're born with. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned, it can be practiced, and you can absolutely master it. Okay, let's just dive right in and see what I mean. On the left, you've got this beast of a sentence. It's wordy, it's clunky, it's kind of like a rickety old bridge. You're not really sure if it's going to get you to the other side. But then look at the right. Same idea, but it's direct, it's strong, it's clear. That right there is the difference between a weak sentence and a well-built one.
And that's exactly what we're talking about today. We're going to treat writing a sentence like a construction project. Because great sentences aren't just born out of thin air. They're built piece by piece. And today, we're handing you the complete architectural blueprint to build your own.
Now, every single great structure starts with a solid foundation. It's non-negotiable. And in writing, that means getting a handle on the absolute core components of a sentence. If you get this part right, everything else you build on top of it is going to be strong and stable. So first things first, we've got to pour the concrete slab. That's your subject. It's simply the who or what the sentence is all about. It's the main actor, the core idea that everything else is literally built around. It sounds simple, but it is absolutely essential. And right on top of that slab, we build the predicate. This is the part that tells us what the subject is doing or what it is. And it always kicks off with a verb, the action. So if the subject is the what, the predicate is the so what. So how do you actually find this foundation when you're looking at a really complex sentence? Well, here's a super simple 3-step trick. First, find the verb, the main action. Second, find any of those little prepositional phrases, words like in, of, for, and just mentally put parentheses around them. And third, find your subject. And here's the crucial tip. It will never be hiding inside one of those phrases. Okay, our foundation is poured and it's solid. Now it's time for the fun part, framing the walls, connecting the rooms. This is where we stop writing those simple, kind of choppy sentences and start combining our ideas into much more sophisticated and impressive structures. And our first tool for the job is coordination. I want you to think of this as building 2 rooms that are the exact same size and importance, right next to each other. Coordination is the solid, standard doorway that connects them. So what are the nuts and bolts for that doorway? We use what are called coordinating conjunctions, and you can remember them with the acronym FANBOYS: for, and, but, or, yet, and so. Each one builds a slightly different relationship, right? And adds an idea, but shows a contrast, and so points to a result. This is your go-to toolkit for building compound sentences. Let's see it in action. Here we have 2 complete, equally important ideas. 1, the proposal was released, and 2, its findings were criticized. So we join them with a comma and the coordinating conjunction but to really highlight that contrast. Simple, effective, and structurally sound. All right, time for a more advanced tool from our kit, subordination. Now, this isn't about connecting 2 equal rooms anymore. This is like building a grand main hall and then attaching a smaller, less important room to it. It's how you signal to your reader, hey, pay attention, this is the main point. Now, your toolkit for this includes words you use all the time, like because, although, and when. What these words do is turn one of your ideas into what's called a dependent clause, which is just a fancy way of saying it can't stand on its own. It needs the main clause to make any sense, which creates a really clear hierarchy in your sentence. Now, check out the structure here. By starting with the less important idea, because the primary data was inconclusive, the sentence actually builds a little bit of suspense before it delivers the main event. The team started a second phase of testing. And this is a perfect example of a key punctuation rule. Whenever that dependent clause comes first, you've got to use a comma to separate it. The structure is up. Our sentence house is totally functional. But let's be honest, nobody wants to live in a house that's just bare bones. So now it's time for the finishes. This is how we take a sentence from being just correct to being elegant, memorable, and honestly, a real pleasure to read. First up is something called parallelism. Think of this as architectural symmetry. If you've got a list of ideas, they should all have the same grammatical form to look and sound right. Look at that top example. It's a little clunky, a little jarring.
But the bottom one, with that consistent ing structure, it's just balanced, smooth, and professional. It just feels right, you know? Next, we need to declutter. Wordiness is the absolute enemy of strong writing. It's like leaving a bunch of scrap material and junk all over your construction site. By just clearing out those unnecessary filler words and phrases, your sentence immediately becomes cleaner, stronger, and way more impactful. You've got to be ruthless in your cleanup. And finally, let's paint the walls. Using vague language is like painting every single room a boring beige color. Specific, vivid language adds color, texture, and precision. So don't just say a situation was bad. Tell us how it was bad. Saying it resulted in a significant budget deficit paints a much, much clearer picture for your reader. All right, the house is built, the paint is dry, the furniture is in, but before we can hand over the keys, we have to do one last crucial step, a final inspection. This is where we look for any of those common structural flaws that could undermine all of our hard work. And probably the most common structural flaw you'll find is the run-on sentence. This happens when you try to jam two complete, independent ideas together without using the proper connection. It makes your writing look rushed and unprofessional, kind of like a wall that's about to fall over. But here's the good news, you have an entire toolkit to fix it. You can use a simple period, easy. You can use a comma, and one of our fanboys. A semicolon works great for two closely related ideas. You can even level up and use a semicolon with a transition word for some extra flair. Or you can use subordination, the tool we just learned. That's 5 different options. You have a ton of power to fix this common mistake. Here's another quick check, misplaced modifiers. Look at the sentence on the left. The phrase, "that failed," is right next to the committee, which makes it sound like the committee failed, not the experiment. But by simply moving that phrase so it's right next to the thing it's actually describing, the experiment, the logic is fixed and the meaning becomes crystal clear. So there you have it, your complete 4-step blueprint for building better sentences. First, lay that solid foundation with a clear subject and predicate. Second, build a strong framework by combining your ideas. Third, add that style and polish to make it shine. And finally, never ever forget to conduct that final inspection for errors. And remember, this is about so much more than just grammar rules. This is about control. When you master the sentence, you control how your ideas land. You can be clearer, more persuasive, and way more powerful in every single thing you write. You now have the blueprint, you've got the tools, and you know the techniques. So the only question left is, what's the first sentence you're going to go back and rebuild into something stronger?